Welcome back to day number 2 of the Mythic Dungeon International's final Western Cup. Here we will be deciding how BlizzCon dreams will be built and broken. Hello everyone, I'm Jack, and joining me on the desk we've got Sloot, Nagura, and Tettles. And my friends, after a tumultuous day yesterday, we finally see how our bracket is going to be shaping up. Paint for FeM, no girls allowed, especially, which is going to be our first matchup in the lower bracket right now. It's going to be quite big on this one. We're going to start seeing who is going to be having their BlizzCon dreams maybe a little bit more vitalized, while one team is going to be taken out completely on this one, Sloot.
Yeah, I mean, this is... We were talking, there are 3 really contenders for that 4th spot for BlizzCon, and 2 of them are right here facing this first match. I mean, everything is on the line for this team. One of them has the potential to try and keep going to get that BlizzCon spot, and one of them loses everything. They're locked out of their account for life. They don't make the BlizzCon. It's over for them. So this match is huge. I mean, it's do or die for these teams right now. And then, you know, even after that, looking beyond that is not going to be an easy road, but at least they get to stay alive for now.
That's right. It's not an easy road because the next series between Method EU and 40K, if 40K is finding a way to win against them, then they immediately secure their BlizzCon spot for 4th place onto that one. So if we're taking a look at our global standings, we'll be able to start looking at how 40K's had a lead for the rest of the West. But it's been quickly fading here, Tettles, after some disappointing performances.
Yeah, so most of their lead that they occurred, it came off the back of their Season 1 performance and like maintaining that same team, staying together, whereas No Girls Allowed and Paint for FeM, all of their points have actually come from this season as they are newly formed teams. So 40K has been kind of slacking the past 2 weeks. However, this week it seems like they've really put in the time, put in the work required to be able to be a contender team. And they seem like they've been actually a pretty good chance at securing up that 4th place slot just because of how far ahead they are.
Just because of how far ahead they are, but also very important to note on this one, Nagura, we have Method EU in the lower bracket, I think for the very first time in Cup play, which means we have Method NA and Abracadabra in the uppers. So it's a really tough road for 40K to be able to beat Method EU. But on the other hand, Method EU kind of stands to be this sort of spoiler in many cases.
Yeah, so Method EU, they secured their 1st place with points. So no matter what place they get this tournament, they're still going to be 1st. And we've seen them run some very interesting comps yesterday where they're running Double Hunter, Blood Decay, stuff like that. They probably also didn't spend too much time practicing because, again, their place doesn't really matter as much. So there's a chance for 40K to beat Method EU in this lower bracket for sure. But they also stated multiple times on their social media that they really don't like losing. Yeah. So maybe they did put some time into practicing anyway, just because they don't like losing. So I mean, maybe it's going to be difficult for 40K, to be honest.
Well, not only that, but they also directly called out Abracadabra here, Sloot, and they said, hey, we're going to see you in the grand finals.
Yeah, that was a bold statement there from Now. So, I mean, they're already confident. They said, you know, good game, guys. We'll see where it counts in the grand finals, assuming they're going to beat 40K. They might beat Method NA along the way. They're just going to beat everyone and get back to the grand finals and win it too. Now, to be fair, if there's any team that can make a bold statement like that and back it up, it has been Method EU. So we'll see if the tweet ages well or not.
Oh, I'm sure you're going to be looking at that one intensely. Let's talk about our first matchup as well. Paint for FeM and No Girls Allowed. We've seen these teams continue to grow and develop over the course of these Cup plays titles. And at this point, what do you think? Who do you think has better chance of winning against them and against potentially Method EU or 40K after that?
So for being purely results focused, No Girls Allowed should technically be better because they've won the match multiple times against Paint for FeM. They've knocked them out many times as well. However, it seems like this week No Girls Allowed had some major issues yesterday. Just their consistency was not there, whereas on the other side, Paint for FeM looked like they were very well prepared, looked like they really came to play. It also kind of depends on whether Paint for FeM and No Girls Allowed decided that they wanted to play through the upper half of the bracket, and if they were ready to play some of these matches that were in the lower half. Because like the first match is Ataldazar, and starting off with that bolstering Atal, it can be kind of scary if you haven't practiced specifically for bolstering, because a lot of the strategies that we've seen involve pulling Colossus, less Sard snapping just in general, just because of how challenging it is to like separate out the Skyscreamers from the Sards and make sure that you don't get one really big bird.
Yeah, we saw that We saw that in particular. I'll let you have that one, all right?
I love how I love this joke more than anyone else.
He does. He does love that one more than anything else. But you mentioned it. Ataldazar in particular, we've seen how routes have completely gone off the beaten track there. So many times people have been reimagining how they wanted to do it, not only with the Colossi salute, but we also saw a number of pulls going into that undead wing on the Volkal side.
Yeah, that was a bit interesting. And, I was talking with you, Tettles, actually, about it yesterday a lot. Is it really worth it? I mean, it looks cool, and all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, we haven't seen this since like season 1, and this looks great. But at the end of the day, kind of looking back through it, it's maybe not really worth compared to still doing some of the swords with a sap on the Sky Screamer as well. So I'm not really sure how much time the team's gained out of it. It seems that Abracadabra's version was definitely a bit cleaner, where they kind of got rid of the honor guards, killed everything in the middle on top of the void, and then left. But even the amount of setup and moving parts and things that could go wrong, like one of the honor guards just breaking on top of the group, is, maybe not worth.
And speaking of worthwhile, when we're looking at our next game after that, we have Toligor, and we saw a number of times ago where that Ring of Frost was coming into play for No Girls Allowed when we saw them last week. We were kind of hyping that up. We're like, oh, that's great. They're going to be able to get the roots together. We saw it with Dr. J on that lightning quick Toligor run they had. He didn't want to go for that, and instead he was going for heavier slows just in general. And looking at how worthwhile it is for some of these actions, we saw it with like Sigil of Misery previously. Now we're seeing it with the Ring of Frost. Those different mechanics to stop everybody from dealing any damage to it, just so you can allow everything to group up. I was kind of wondering what you thought on how worth those things would be.
It always depends on the setup time, right? Sometimes a pool looks really flashy and it looks very clean, but it might not be worth it just because the time it took you to set up this very specific pool was too much. So it would be more efficient to just do it slower, or do it instead of doing one huge pool, you do 2 pools. Maybe that's even faster just because the setup time takes too long. But this Toligor that we saw from Abra, that was really fast. So with the mage having the constant slow in the front, and I think just ranged in general helps out in Toligor specifically if you want to do huge amounts of trash with the cannon part, because melees can't really do anything in the cannon part. You can't go into melee range, so the only thing that really helps you out is those ranged CCs. So having that mage really helps. I'm not completely sure. No Girls Allowed, they can play the mage, right? Pain for FeM, Shell maybe look into a mage, but I'm not sure if they really practiced this at all.
It's been a while. I think Shella played mage last season.
Yeah, just once.
Briefly,
like one time ever, and that was the last time he was ever allowed to play it again. So.
Especially not in raid.
Oh yeah, not with warlocks the way they are.
Oh, that's true. He did save our Ashara progression. We needed some kind of gateway to be able to take us to the victory on that one. And you're right. Interesting to look at how people are going to be able to develop and start going off of alts. Tettles, you mentioned a number of times where looking at what Sistara was going to be playing, or looking how Shella has been developing on those other alts. We've seen every team usually has a couple players they're the ones to start switching into the new meta roles.
Yeah, and there just has to be, you have to have like a Windwalker monk eventually able to play, like you actually see from No Girls Allowed. There needs to be some Unholy Death Knight players, potentially 2 Unholy Death Knight players for a lot of this stuff. Of course, having a lot of Outlaw Rogues, being able to flex into that Frost Mage whenever it is in fact needed is also very important as well. There's just a bunch of classes that you need to be able to flex to.
It's kind of interesting that they're actually playing the Unholy here in Atal, because we have bolstering, right? So usually when there's bolstering in a dungeon, people just shy away from the Unholy, because you use the Unholy to do those huge pulls, especially on top of bosses. But with bolstering, you can't really do that. So interesting to see that No Girls Allowed still chooses to play Unholy.
I don't think that's a horrible idea in bolstering, because there's a few dangerous pulls if you think about it in Atal, where they pull 6+ mobs.
Yeah.
So having equal cleave on everything, just burst crazy cleave, is not the end of the world. But I do agree, obviously, they don't benefit on top of the boss. They could if they wanted to. Probably don't want to. We talked about this yesterday, but I don't think it's the worst choice. And, some of it might be a bit of a comfort pick, too, on top of it.
Also, if you look at the pull in the Priestess room, right, where you pull a lot of mobs together, you still have the Juggernauts have more HP than the rest of the group, though. So maybe having this huge burst AoE might not even be that beneficial. But we'll see how well they deal with it, I guess.
That's where like the Windwalker monk will come into play.
Yeah, that's true.
Because Windwalker monk does like insane priority damage. So like the DK can just like spam AoE, where the Windwalker monk is like touch of deathing like a specific mob, or maybe focusing on like those Juggernauts or whatever.
It just feels less efficient then, though, right?
It is technically less efficient, right? As opposed to being able to just like spam AoE on even health targets.
I think that's always an interesting point when you have some of these different classes that, they'd like to be focusing more on AoE, but they're sacrificing their greater DPS just to be able to single target some of those mobs down. And we saw it, even back in 2017 when we were having subtlety rogues who were just nuking single mobs down every single time.
Buff sub rogues.
I think we're good onto that one. I think their age has ended finally. After this point, we'll have to start ending outlaw rogues.
Double sub-rogue dungeons is what we're going to see next.
Oh no! I mean that was all Team D back in the day. Remember?
Oh
Yeah,
my gosh!
you remember when
double
Bolstering
sub.
was, and they would just pull a lot of trash on top of the bosses just because they would gain so much single-target damage. Like Bolstering, what? What is that affix?
Or they pulled the dogs into the Mariner and Maw of Souls. That was like the weirdest pull of all time.
That
Oh,
we were
yeah.
constantly finding crabs in what is it, Eye of Ashara?
Yeah.
As well.
I've taken all of those out of my memory.
You didn't love having like the massive crab pulls into Eye of Ashara? Oh, the dream.
Crab King.
Yep. Well, I remember we have like some 5-10 minute pulls or something like that because we bolstered crabs too much. We just had these king crabs that were just kiting out all the way down.
Oh man,
It was
good
the
time.
dream. We'll have to see if they make any king trolls onto this one. We saw some big bolsters going out onto those colossi before, but if you guys would like to place your vote on who you think will be taking this series, be sure to use hashtag PFF or hashtag girl right now as game number 1 getting started in Italdazar.
Well, that was a nice little fun trip down memory lane there as we get started here in Natal. And I don't think any of these two teams, from what I remember yesterday, went up to the right. The only two teams that we saw were Abra and 40K, and it looks like both teams are already hugging that left side. We can already see the Arcana Trinket channeled there by Ricky on the side of Paint for FeM now. Only difference between the two teams is that No Girls Allowed, as we mentioned earlier, is running that Unholy DK for Sistar, whereas it's double Rogue over there for Paint for FeM.
Yeah, so we see a huge pull come in for both teams here. Both of them popping that Bloodlust. We see the healer jumping onto the staircase there just to make sure the Juggernauts are not charging anywhere. And now it's going to be really important to have this focused target damage on the high HP targets. Now, whoever handles bolstering better here will just finish the pull faster. And that's something we've been talking about earlier with the Unholy DK. You see Sistara actually holding back quite a bit in damage. You see he's actually getting out DPS by the Protower, and there comes the damage.
What are you saying?
Yeah, but you see how the Juggernauts actually bolster quite a lot, and it really seems like, I mean, they both finished at kind of at the same time,
All right,
right?
it's still early. It's still early.
Yeah,
Digger,
they
I
finished at the
understand.
same time, so pretty even here. Maybe Paint for FeM slightly faster.
Slightly faster, and here come the Colossus right now, the Construct pull upstairs. Neither team opting to snap like we saw 40K do earlier. There's actually a couple of different spots you can snap, which is hugely advantageous because it prevents your healer from needing to run around like a maniac, and it also makes the Enchanted Emissary on the side there much easier to deal with. But both teams handling it really well. We can see a nice view here from our observers with Edelweiss up on one of those tree or flower plant pots, if you will, making sure that she is immune from the Juggernaut charges and they sit nice and stacked. Now, the key here, as mentioned yesterday, is you want to take care of that Colossus early. It has substantially more health than the trolls around it, and if a troll dies near the Colossus, it will gain a 10% damage buff on top of something that's already doing a lot of damage.
That's a very big Colossus, as you can see on No Girls Allowed side. They should still be able to finish it off. There we go. So no problem at all. They did finish it earlier compared to Paint for FeM, so they're slightly slower here. But both of them doing the exact same pulls, as you can see with the percentage. They're both on 31%. You see the double CC come in here on those two mobs that are standing on top of the staircase. And now we'll see if they do another huge pull here, which is what No Girls Allowed is doing. They also actually gripped in the Augur from the staircase mobs. You see there's some wildfires going through, and Dilemma Undead dropping quite low, and Paint for FeM looks like they're doing the same pull.
Yeah, they're doing the same pull here, and then the trick with the middle there's an Enchanted Emissary. That Emissary is actually not physically tied to the big pack in front of Priestess Alunza, so by pulling it from the side like the two tanks did with that weapon throw, you're able to just extract them out, and then somebody else can kind of just deal with it and punt it on this side. So No Girls Allowed yet again being first to it, just because of the prowess of the Unholy DK, really. I mean, look at the damage. They destroy everything in there and are ready to pick up Priestess Alunza already. There's still the Enchanted Emissary on the side. That's no problem for them to just deal with one on the side, as we can see Edelweiss working to punt it away with Spam Moonfire. She gets a couple of Regress off as she goes in. Paint for FeM looking a fair bit slower here. A lot of mismanaging on the bolster, and just look at the health of that one Priestess on the side. She's not even channeling Transfusion, which she can use to reflect the damage back on. So there's a lot of extra health that they have to chew through. Yeah,
so there was one Transfusion on the Rasta Druid, and he was just too late to step into one of those pools, and therefore it just didn't die early. And then another difference for Paint for FeM in this pool was that Miwu, the Rasta Druid, didn't actually jump on any sort of ledge, so the Juggernaut was charging out, meaning that they lost damage on the Juggernaut because of that charge, and therefore the damage was not as even as it could be. While No Girls Allowed had Edelweiss actually stand on one of those lanterns, and therefore the Juggernaut was not charging, and they had way more even damage. So good on No Girls Allowed to find this spot there, while Paint for FeM didn't really bother with it. So it cost them a couple of seconds only, but how close these two teams are right now, it means quite a bit. And No Girls Allowed even did a bigger pull as they're 2% ahead in trash.
I was just about to say, wouldn't be surprised to see the trash from downstairs near the fire gauntlet pulled by both teams. We saw that popular yesterday. Essentially, as long as you do the mechanics properly, of course, once the boss is sub 25%, the fight is over because she's going to kill herself with transfusion. So even if you bolster her just a bit, as long as the tank doesn't get gibbed, you're good to go, which is why you see the 4-pack of trash pulled from the bottom, the double honor and the double honor, the double auger and the double honor guard. They're just going to cleave that on top of the boss as primary efficiency and aim to kill everything at the same time. Transfusion coming up for No Girls Allowed. Priestess and Loons will die very quickly here. Paint for FeM not too far behind either. They still have to deal one more round, and they'll be on their way downstairs as the 2 augers get killed off as well.
Yeah, so Ricky was the one, the Windwalker, who went down to pull this trash pack, and it seemed like he took quite a bit to get it pulled. So maybe the boss is going to die before the mobs die, which means that it will be just a little bit less efficient compared to No Girls Allowed, just because Priestess Alunsa is going to die no matter what to the next transfusion anyway. So pulling them slightly earlier is an advantage. Just a couple of seconds gained again by No Girls Allowed, as they're already on their way to pulling Rizan. So no trash in between here, just straight going to Rizan.
So important to note that there is, I mean, perhaps not significant, but it could make a difference at the end with the amount of Skyscreamers they need to do. There is a 2% trash difference between these 2 equivalent routes, and that is the auger that you mentioned earlier at the beginning of the zone. So No Girls Allowed has that 2% advantage, and they've already gotten started on Rizan. So far, these are completely mirror strategies and pretty typical strategies that we see from teams, at least for the most part. Rizan pulled here for No Girls Allowed, about to get to 90%, and they have an Emissary of Tides on top of it with quite a few Raptors, and they're trying really hard to play around that Unholy DK and feed it as much extra damage funneled into Rizan from the AoE cleave.
And there's also one interesting thing. No Girls Allowed has a Sky Screamer there in the corners to see it, so they will probably pull it on top of Rizan at the very end once they're sure that they're not going to bolster him. So just small little percentage gains from No Girls Allowed. So very smart strategies here, getting a little bit more percentage compared to Paint for FeM here and there. We actually also see once a seed in Paint for FeM, so never mind. They actually do the exact same thing. Not sure if they're going to pull some more even at the very end, maybe even more than 1 Sky Screamer. But yeah, this is the most efficient strat you can do. Just even with bolstering, just finding those small little percentages you can gain by efficiently just cleaving it down with a high HP target like a boss.
Yeah, I mean, we saw this yesterday. What happens is they needed to get one of the Sky Screamers down in order to pull the Emissary of the Tides down to them, because the Emissary of the Tides at the top of the stairs rests between that 2-pack of Sky Screamers. So they pull one down, they crowd control on the side, and then they're going to pull the second one down. You can kind of see it at the top of the screen there for Paint for FeM. It's just sitting up there. They're going to pull the second one down and cleave it along with the boss, as you mentioned, at the end. At least that was a strategy going yesterday for some of the teams. We'll see if they try to replicate that here. No Girls Allowed sits at 63% trash, 45% now on Rizan. Paint for FeM not too far behind. They're only about 10%, 10-11% on Rizan, I suppose, is actually quite a bit in this Tyrannical Affix, but they are, that is the difference between them, and they sit at 4% behind on trash, but they're about to kill the Emissary, which will put them to 61.
Yeah, so still Paint for FeM slightly behind because of this, because just of the better handling of bolstering, really. At the start, I was talking about the Unholy maybe being less efficient with bolstering, but it really seems like they're doing it really well. They're calculating the damage really well. They're handling bolstering well. So good job on No Girls Allowed so far, making up those small little seconds. Now, this boss, you can see, all they have to do is hide around the corner to not get feared, and the Fixate completely gets avoided by the team by using either Shadow Melt or Banish to just completely get rid of the Fixate, and then the boss does not move and they just gain more damage.
Yeah, so as stated earlier, the 2 Sky Screamers are now present here on No Girls Allowed as Rizan's getting cleaved down. They got to make sure, of course, not to kill the Sky Screamers before Rizan dies, who's now hit 9% for No Girls Allowed. So they pulled even further ahead by about 15-16% as Paint for FeM is going in for a second round of cooldowns now, and they're looking to chisel down their 2 Sky Screamers. So once again, exactly mirror strategies. They just have to make sure to interrupt those Sky Screamers once every 15 seconds so one melee can handle it completely. Everything perfectly dies together for No Girls Allowed, who immediately mounts up and starts heading up the stairs.
Yeah, so Paint for FeM now also is working on those Sky Screamers, but again, they might actually die a little bit too early. As you can see, 6% is kind of a lot still on a Tyrannical boss, but they definitely try to not finish them early. Okay, so one died right before the boss died, so it didn't matter too much. Well done by Paint for FeM as well to finish it off. But yeah, it's like half a minute to a minute behind at this point compared to No Girls Allowed, as they are already snapping some of those swords on the side. They really want to make sure that you do not bolster any of the Sky Screamers here. You want to make sure that you use the Trucity, which is sapped by a rogue, and it seems like Pain for FeM was doing it wrong, as they have one of the Sky Screamers here on top of this pool.
I mean, wrong or intended, they might be
yeah.
priority cleaving off of the Sky Scream, and they seem to be doing a good job of it. Now, there's technically nothing bad about doing this outside of sustained tank damage, right? Because you have just a ton of swords sitting on the tank the whole time instead of cleaving them down. And yeah, you can see exactly why. And FeM goes down, so I guess in the end, it's not the best strategy, at least for tank safety. In terms of efficiency, you get that cleave off, fine, no problem. But the tank gets gib. FeM goes down on Pain for FeM. He immediately releases. They hold on to their battle rest because he can start at the beginning of the dungeon. And they did actually manage to kill the trash off, so not too much lost except for that 5 seconds worth and then rebuffing FeM, etc. So it looks like they're going up to the Volcall wing that we saw yesterday, and they're doing the same pull on top of that Void Emissary, whereas No Girls Allowed is opting to go on a more typical strategy down the bridge with the swords and Sky Screamers.
Yeah, we were talking about this just before the game started, figuring out which strategy is actually faster, because Pain for FeM doing this strategy that we saw by 40k and Abracadabra, where they would deal with this unholy pack basically, whilst they're seeing the honor guides. Now, it is a little bit of backtracking because you don't actually need to go this route to go up to Volcall. You could also just go through the middle, and No Girls Allowed just dealing with the swords instead of doing this left undead pack. So we'll see whichever route ends up to be faster. No Girls Allowed already in 84%, and already they're almost done with this pack as well. So it really seems like Pain for FeM just falling further and further behind.
Yeah, and what's impressive about No Girls Allowed pull here is that they actually combined both Sky Screamers on top of the 2 Witch Doctors, on top of the 2 Honor Guards, and then on top of the Stalkers. So made it like a rather spicy pull, and it worked very nicely for them. Interrupts were on point, bolstering and kills were on point, Unholy DK carrying damage again to cleave everything down. And now they're at 98% trash, so all they need is that one remaining Sky Screamer at the end of the dungeon that they're probably going to pull into Yasma's room, crowd control on the side, and then just cleave on top of the boss. And here they go. They get started on Volcall, the second last boss that they need to deal with first phase here. Dilemma getting smashed by the boss, unfortunately, gets caught in the swirly. So not what you want to see early on, but it should be all right, as Pain for FeM not far behind, at least from a boss perspective. Only a few percent behind on the totems in phase 1, but they have 10% extra trash to do, and that will be the trash at the bottom of the Volcall stairs that we were just commenting that No Girls Allowed did quite well.
Yeah, the only way for Pain for FeM to catch up here is by either No Girls Allowed making some sort of mistake, or Pain for FeM somehow gets their last percentage while fighting the boss, and that's really not going to happen. You can't pull anything on top of Volcall anymore because the gate is closed, and you could pull 12% of trash on top of Yasma, but that's really difficult, and I doubt it's going to happen to be able to cleave it down with this boss, especially since it's bolstering as well. So 10% difference is gonna make it here for No Girls Allowed, as they just dealt with the trash a lot more efficient. It seemed like they were having very similar strats up until this very last point, but No Girls Allowed just doing everything a little bit faster, a little bit more efficient, and also the last routing seemed more efficient for No Girls Allowed as well, as both of them are working on Volcall right now, and Pain for FeM actually catching up slightly on the boss, but it still won't matter just because of the 10% difference.
Yeah, I mean, that's a lot that they have to deal with at the end. Both teams quite neck and neck, and they did catch up a bit. I mean, they were about 20-30% average totem health behind No Girls Allowed here at the beginning, so now they've mostly matched up the boss health, and obviously both teams holding on to that Bloodlust, not wanting to use it here, as we see a shield wall pop for FeM, giving a bit of breathing room for Mule right now. No dispels on the diseases coming out of Ricky or Undead on either side, because DPS greedy brain. Certainly don't want to lose that, so force the healer to heal through it, and that is totally okay with me. Now, the difference between the boss has started splitting here, as No Girls Allowed pulls by almost 10% ahead of Pain for FeM.
Yeah, so after this boss, No Girls Allowed, as we mentioned before, really only has to get a Sky Screamer that they see in a corner on Yasma's room. So nothing they have to do in between the last boss and this one, while Pain for FeM still has to deal with a lot of trash. Now, one small thing that is maybe in Pain for FeM's favor a little bit is that there's a little bit of an RP at the very end that won't allow you to access Yasma, but it's only a couple of seconds. So if Pain for FeM somehow manages to kill 10% trash in those 10 seconds that you have the RP, then they will be caught up, but there's no way that's going to happen. So definitely still disadvantage for Pain for FeM, and it's also one death as well on top of everything else.
Yeah, well, I mean, both teams have to deal with that RP, so In fact, No Girls Allowed can get there even faster and start the stair RP.
But they can't, I mean, they can't really kill anything during it, right? Because they already have 98% is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. Well, they could kill this guy. But nonetheless, Pain for FeM. Yeah, but also Pain for FeM is not going to just have one of the rogues run off by himself. So either way, they're in a dire situation right now as both teams finish off Volcall at around the same time. So Pain for FeM managed to close that gap, but they have to deal with this trash here at the bottom of the stairs. There's the double Stalkers, the double Honor Guard, double Witch Doctor, along with that Enchanted Emissary as well. They do that, but No Girls Allowed is allowed to just cleanly run through, and they're going to move right past this trash pack on the side. We're going to have Trell aggroing everything, and then Heroic leaping away, popping a Shadow Meld, and I didn't think he got it off for a sec because that sword kept coming, but they managed to do it properly. RP for the stairs has started, as Nagura mentioned, and they start heading up to Yasma. Hopefully none of them get clipped by a spider. It'd be largely embarrassing.
Yeah, we also saw the Sky Screamer there being pulled by Undead, by the Windwalker, and No Girls Allowed side. Edelweiss actually is running Mass Root, so just makes it a little bit easier to constantly succeed at Sky Screamer now. You probably don't want to use a Root though, just because Root doesn't make the mob not cast. So the Sky Screamer will still cast a Fear if it's rooted, so you probably just have Undead use the Paralyze or the Hibernate by the Raster Druid here in the corner. Now, Ricky actually going down, unfortunately, for Pain for FeM as they're doing one of their skips. Probably didn't get the Shadow Melt off properly, but they have the 100% trash now as well. They will be able to access... Oh no, the Raster's not actually in range. So Miwu has to recast the Rast, costing them a precious time still.
Yeah, I mean, everything's going wrong here for Pain for FeM right now, who I would say was the superior team between the two yesterday, and today No Girls Allowed is really showing that they've turned around their mentality from the poor games that they had yesterday, and they're on Yasma already, 70% bloodless, so it still has 5 seconds left. We see the last Sky Screamer that they need as planned, crowd controlled with a Paralyze from Undead in the corner. They're going to pull that at around, I don't know, 10% on Yasma, something like that, and cleave it all down together, assuming everything goes as planned.
You can see how close those two teams are though, right? Pain for FeM, if Ricky wouldn't have died there at the very end, Pain for FeM wouldn't have engaged the last boss that much later. Of course, those two deaths in some other games wouldn't mean as much, but because those two teams are so close to one another, especially here in the Sataldasar, it's still going to end up being a very close match between those two. No Girls Allowed still has to do the Sky Streamer, while Pain for FeM actually does have the 100% now. Those two deaths definitely going to make a difference as well, and you can also see the unholy damage here at the very last boss. When you have the Bloodlust and you have the army and you have all of those big cooldowns from the unholy DK, it's a huge amount of burst damage that comes out of it. Now on longer fights it might fall off a little bit later, but you can still see it's a 20% difference approximately on the boss, and that just means quite a lot on a tyrannical environment.
Yeah, I mean, Pain for FeM has once again closed the gap a bit. They have quite good single target damage. They're only 13% behind now, as opposed to the 30 that it was when they first pulled the boss. And Shella, unfortunately, just not mastering the 5 roll. He's falling just a bit behind Bear there, but doing what he can as Yasma goes below 50% for Pain for FeM. No Girls Allowed sitting at 35% right now, and they're going to need soon enough to start thinking about dealing with that Sky Screamer. Both teams soon enough are going to have another round of their images on the side, so they're probably going to cleave that down first, and then No Girls Allowed is going to make the move onto the Sky Screamer.
Yeah, so outside of just nuking down the boss here and single target mattering a lot, you also have the Soul Rend. Whoever handles the Soul Rend better will also gain a little bit more damage on the boss. You can see the closer you can pull the Soul Rend next to the boss, the more of a damage gain it's going to be, because if you don't run out of melee range, the rogues can just continue hitting the boss while still just placing the Soul Rend away. Then you just need to make sure that you rotate the CC properly with the Ring of Peace, Vortex, Typhoon coming from the Raster Druids. Now, No Girls Allowed did engage the Sky Screamer. They just want to make sure that they don't bolster the boss. We see Edelweiss actually going down, but they have a rest. Thankfully, they have the Unholy DK coming through. Now it's only a 5 seconds difference between the two teams, but it's still not going to matter as No Girls Allowed is going closer and closer and finishing off Yasma.
FeM getting down to 5% on his side as well, and Pain for FeM just caught up so much right now. They saw the Sky Screamer to kill here, and Pain for FEM's done. They only have 5 seconds to finish this off right now. They actually lose the match.
Wow.
Oh. They finish it off.
Girls Allowed. Wow. All right, I was even going to say, I was like, if Pain for FeM hadn't had that death, they would have been neck and neck. But
right?
Probably No Girls Allowed would have won. But after seeing how much that they were able to catch up on that one, 9 times out of 10, I don't know, Pain for FeM might just have taken it onto that one. That one death out of Ricky. That's all it was.
And then they had to cast rest twice as well.
And they had to cast rest twice, so it was 20 seconds and travel time and all that other.
If I was someone on Pain for FeM right now, I would be playing the blame game and pointing fingers at all my teammates and getting really angry. That would be the best way to go about this.
I think so.
That's why you're not my teammate.
It's very healthy.
I think so too, Ted.
It's a very healthy way of doing it.
No, but that was heartbreaking because, you know, if they had lost by the 10 seconds plus the 30% on the boss, it'd be like, okay, like they were just better, they were faster overall on the map, but it was so close to being handed to them at the end.
Yeah, I mean, overall, this match was really neck and neck, and for some reason, it feels like just no girls allowed whenever they match up versus Pain for FeM. I feel like they always end up 2-0ing them, but I really don't know why, because these teams should be just like, maybe it is just because like they're like coin flipping some of these matches and it's just like always falling in No Girls Alloud's favor. Overall, the strategy for Ataldazar from No Girls Allowed, how they were pulling the bottom pack of Volcall Trash, whereas Pain for FeM ended up choosing to go right. We were talking about it a little bit before on the desk about what's actually the best strategy, and it seems like it's still very close and kind of up for debate as to what's actually the best strategy. The shield bearers end up costing you time in both spots, casting that bulwark of Juju, but at the end of the day, No Girls Allowed just ends up eking it out just by mere seconds. That was a very close match between both teams.
By literally 1 second.
Wow.
We got the official times onto it. It was literally 1 second difference between those teams on that one. That was incredible. And you mentioned routing in particular is very important, but it's also how people are using some of the snap spots to their own advantage, especially when they take on some of those Colossi.
Yeah, so no path available spots are very interesting, and like we deem them as snap spots because most of the time people end up using them to like teleport mobs to them. However, spots with no path available also can be used in a different way, and we can see it with Method Dungeon tools here. Basically, the Juggernauts as well, whenever somebody is in these no path available spots, the Juggernaut will not charge them and they won't even leave the group. So with this pull that No Girls Allowed ends up doing, there are actually 2 Juggernauts in the pack, and the Juggernauts have, on an 18 Tyrannical, about 300,000 more health than the rest of the group. So they need a little bit more single target damage focus compared to the rest of the mobs there, because in addition to that, if they charge out of the group, they will also have some major issues. No Girls Allowed does this where Edel will end up standing on one of these braziers off to the side, whereas Pain for FeM ended up not using that, where the Juggernaut would end up charging. So we can watch in the clip how Edel is actually sitting on top of that brazier. No Girls Allowed also does something very interesting where they end up taunting one of the corner mobs in that middle pack, not allowing the Enchanted Emissary in the pack at all, because they're not like linked, so mobs can like patrol like through them without pulling them sometimes. So you need to like know like specifically which mob to taunt. So No Girls Allowed does a really good job of setting up this pull. You see Edel in that brazier spot, not letting the Juggernauts charge out, and then they make they should potentially be making really good use of that Unholy Death Knight, as you actually do see damage coming out of Sistar right there at the very end. And that is how they're using the Unholy Death Knight to their advantage, where seemingly it would not be the best composition for them.
Interesting under that one. I know we were talking previously about whether or not they wanted to have that Unholy Death Knight, whether it would be more advantageous to them. So very good on in that one. And our next game is going to be Toldagor. But before we do go to that one, we're going to be taking a quick break. So don't go anywhere, guys. The MDI will be back right after this. No Girls Allowed is up 1 against Pain for FeM, as Toldagors are going to be our next map. 63% of Twitchet has voted for No Girls Allowed. Let's see if they're going to be able to take it with a 2-0 sweep on Toldagor.
You know, this map has a lot of, it's one of the maps you think about, Nigger, that's like, that's okay, the cannons do most of the work. But then, you know, you throw like a little necrotic in there, and the tanks don't reset in just houses for it. And well, we have a disaster situation. We saw even Method EU have a lot of struggle with that yesterday. So first off, we do notice Dilemma is now on a Frost Mage. Trell is now on a Brewmaster, so they still have that debuff. And Shella has switched over to an Unholy DK. Kind of weird that you let go of an Unholy DK when you're planning a large-scale pull at the start.
Yeah, so Sarah on the Demon Hunter instead of the Unholy DK. So that's very interesting. We will see what exactly they are planning on doing with this Havoc Demon Hunter, because as we mentioned multiple times, FeM actually going down, unfortunately, here for Pain for FeM, and Shelly going down too. So they might have to reset the boss completely, as 2 DPS are dead, that there's no way of them getting back up. Huge problems here at the very start from Pain for FeM, and this is the whole reason they were running the Unholy DK in the first place, right? So just this pull not working out for them after all of the cooldowns have been used, on top of the Blood bloodlust, huge disaster for Pain for FeM.
Yeah, 6 deaths off the bat. So many mobs close to low health, which is why FeM released and tried to desperately salvage the situation. Mismanagement there completely of damage intake from both the crocodiles that reduce your maximum HP and hit you for quite a substantial amount as a tank. And then on top of it, necrotic too. It was just too much for FeM to handle. Trell managed to stay alive. He obviously had quite a bit of incoming damage too. The mobs aren't dead here for them, but the power of the Frost Mage allows him to just slowly backpedal Kite like this and have a reset whenever, frankly, he feels like it. But most importantly, avoid a ton of damage coming in from those mobs and a ton of necrotic stacking up. So far, yeah, they're missing the Unholy DK, and honestly, the Unholy DK probably would have had all this trash dead by now, but at least they're still alive. Undead, though, proccing Sheet Death, just as I said, take my curse, take it.
Yeah, just gotta keep an eye on this Havoc Demon Hunter. There must be a specific reason why they're running this. One thing to note as well is that he's running Nether Walk, actually. So he is running the immunity. Maybe it has something to do with that. Maybe they just really wanted that Nether Walk for whatever reason. Either way, we're just gonna keep an eye on that Demon Hunter just to see what exactly they're doing with it. Now, Pain for FeM, they did all get back to life. Now they are engaging Sand Queen again with some mobs. Now this time around, Shallow probably does not have the cooldown available anymore that they did the first time around, and they also don't have the Bloodlust. So they want to make sure that the same thing doesn't happen again. They need to make sure that FeM stays alive with all of those necrotic stacks on top.
Yeah, and Sand Queen about to die here for No Girls Allowed as they finish off an Emissary of the Tides. You know, the Havoc Demon Hunter, the Havoc Demon, Shelly going down here as well, just as some standard trash. I mean, this is just, this is an absolute mess right now for Pain for FeM. Ricky getting quite low as well. FeM running around desperately with 50 stacks of necrotic. He goes down. Sanguine still at 78%. Ricky goes down. Mew goes down, and that's another full team wipe here. And the trash was at low percentage for Pain for FeM. So absolute disaster scenario here for them as No Girls Allowed has finished off the boss and is in underground in the sewers getting ready to head up to the buff floor. But what I was saying is, you know, maybe one thing with the Havoc DH is it does provide the only other true CC that exists within prison, so they can get past these 2 mobs perhaps. Obviously not something they want to do, so don't listen to me, but that's one of the advantages I can think of. I'm not sure what they want to do with Netherwalk exactly. Maybe he's going to tank something temporarily upstairs when they try to round everything together, but AoE stun. I'm just throwing things out there.
Dispel, Darkness. I'm not sure. Either way, maybe just actually Demon Hunter. The one thing that you want to bring Demon Hunter for is not only like the things we mentioned, but they're very tanky against magic damage because they get less magic damage by default. Then they also have Blur, just a 30% DR on top of having dodge. Then you have Netherwalk, you have Darkness. There's lots of things they have. They have a lot of leech on top of that as well. So maybe it's for the safety. Maybe he wants to tank something. Maybe being the cannon as well, being able to survive a bunch of damage while being in the cannon might be worth it as well. Either way, they did pull Jess Hallis through the wall actually with the, I think it was the I-beam from Sistara here, so maybe that's also a reason why they're running it. Either way, we're probably just gonna have to ask him unless we see something very interesting. You see the CC there in the back as well. 1 sheep, 1 cage, and 1 sap. So they want to make sure they CC as many mobs as possible here, just so Trell doesn't die to the necrotic stacks.
Yeah, interesting for them. Usually we see some teams kind of grab all of that trash, cleave it down first, and then deal with Jess. Now, Jess could have been pulled through the wall from Trell as well, so I'm not sure that was a particular advantage from the Havoc, or that's the reason they brought the Havoc kind of thing. Nonetheless, here comes 1 AoE from them. AoE if you're going out, interrupt as well. Trell does drop his 23 stacks of necrotic, and Jess Hallis now transitions as well. But we're going to have the trash soon coming on top of them, not just the one around the corner with the Void Emissary there, but also the 3 that they've crowd controlled, and the team heads off and immediately goes up to meet Jess Hallis along the way. So not sure what they're planning here, but if they do a very meaty pull, it can get out of hand pretty quickly for the tank.
Yeah, it also, what we didn't mention is the 5% spell damage buff, right? So maybe since they have Dilemma, having more spell damage, and they already have the physical buff from Trell anyway. Either way, it seems like a very rounded comp. If they don't need the Unholy DK damage, then I definitely think this is the way to go. As they're still working on Jess Hallis here. They are in phase 2 now, so we have Bobby here as well. You see the Master actually come out from Edelweiss, which is so helpful here for the tank. You can see all of those mobs just being rooted there in the corner. And we've seen tanks have problems so much here in this fight because of the necrotic. Just because you get all of these mobs come in, you have those those raiders, which don't have a lot of HP, but every auto attack applies necrotic, and it's so hard for the tanks to reset it because the boss can't be CC'd, sorry, and then you can't really kite all of those mobs because there's not much room either, since you always have to line of sight. We saw now even from Method you go down to necrotic stacks, so having this mass route here and a well out-thought strategy by No Girls Allowed really goes in their favor here.
Yeah, I'm actually really liking this. This is a really clever play from them. They're already at 23% trash. They really don't need any more with all the cannon play that they're going to do upstairs, mass pulling there. They have, you know, some teams have even been doing so much cannon play that they're even skipping some of the trash right before Knight Captain Valeri, so they certainly don't need all the trash in the corner there, so they're just going to end up shadow melding it off, going upstairs. So I think they might wait for one more route just to refresh it before heading upstairs, and then they're going to, oh, actually they're going now, so they're going to skip that and everything once they get to the cannon area. So really nice play from them. Undad, though, almost going down along the way. He got a bit overzealous and went in ahead of Trell, pulling some of the trash, dipped down to 1%, and he doesn't have cheat death available, so that could have been pretty disastrous there, but managed to avert the death as Pain for FeM finally getting themselves back in the game. FeM running around right now through the sewers with the rest of the team as they have killed the Sanguine, are heading upstairs to the buff floor. So, but I mean, Pain for FeM is so behind right now compared to the rest of the group. Dilemma, though, doesn't make it upstairs, and Edelweiss barely makes it up. Her undulating tides procs along the way, and she's forced to res Dilemma now.
Yeah, that was a very scary skip coming in here by No Girls Allowed. That could have been a disaster if Edelweiss would have went down. Really hard for her to come back at this spot, especially if you don't have Shadow Melt available, and stealthing doesn't really work as well just because there's so many true side mobs in the way. So good on them to have Edelweiss to survive and just get the rest up on Dilemma. You see, they're dealing with the void-touched emissary now and a bunch of trash, so everyone's dropping very low. They want to make sure that they're line of sighting the next AoE, as it just does so much damage, and Edelweiss has a hard time keeping up the whole group here.
Yeah, the problem there is that Edelweiss, Sistara, and Dilemma all got hit by the frontal suppression fire from one of the Marines, which is an absolute no-no. It snapshots your direction, and I guess it targeted Trell, who then chi torpedoed away from it, and the rest of the team just didn't notice and then got clipped by it, which is why everything seemed so unstable there for a moment. So really making Edelweiss's life just a bit tough, but they managed to stabilize as they pull everything back into the hallway before the cannon balcony so that Trell can get himself in a prime position to get in this room and pull as much trash as possible, bringing it back towards the room. Now, we have Mass Root, we have Ring of Peace, and we have a Frost Mage. Their control here, as far as the, that could have been bad. As far as the balcony is concerned, should be supreme. It doesn't get really better than this.
Yeah, this was a very dangerous. Yeah, this was a very dangerous pull to do by Trell here. He was already low when he walked in, just using that speed potion, and then when he transcended back up, there were a couple of volcanoes there. Thankfully, he did mention, oh, he's going down there. They do have a battle rest available, so they should get him back up. But this means that all of the mobs are actually kind of spread out, as you can see right now. And Anda didn't really get any shots out yet. While they're already spread, this might cause a lot of problems for them, because look at how many mobs there are, and if you don't kill them fast, there's so much AoE damage going on. This is a full team wipe.
This is a full team wipe, and the huge misplay here is that they kept the Emissary of Tides in the trash. So it ran around immuning all of the crowd control that I had just very eloquently planned out for them. So, you know, everything. The Ring of Frost didn't work, as you saw. Blizzard slowing didn't work. AoE stun from Sistar didn't work. Mass Root didn't work. So that Emissary of Tides was their complete undoing, causing a full team wipe here on an otherwise massive attempt and massive skip. So now they have to redo that entire thing. I don't know. They do have the Shadow Meld available, so they're able to kind of just reset and go again. Undead just getting clipped along the way. So there's another silly death. Another 5 seconds plus the res time on the board, allowing FeM to slowly Pain for FeM to slowly catch up, who is now on the second phase of Jess Howless.
Yeah, so they have to do the same pull again, I believe, since, I mean, that's their strategy, right? They want to gather up all of those mobs and they want to kill it with the cannons. I'm not completely sure if any of the cannon shots have been used.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Thankfully, they had this in mind that something went wrong for sure, right? Either the Mass Root from Edelweiss didn't come on the Emissary, or some other CC was missing. So they called it out on voice chat immediately and said, hey, don't use any of the cannon shots, because they need them. There's only 5 shots in each cannon, and if they want to get rid of all of this trash that they just pulled, then they need those shots, because now all of them reset. So if they wasted any of those shots before, it would have been a disaster and they couldn't have done the pull again. So this time around, they try to gather everything up again. Trell is going inside, and they just try the same thing again.
Yeah, I'm curious to see, because The pull overall was fine in terms of getting everything, gathering it up, and getting it in the doorway. Everything fell apart with that Emissary of Tides in there, so I'm not really sure what their plan around that is. We'll see if they even have one as Trell starts face-tanking some of the trash in the doorway here, gets one of the suppression fires, and is really having a struggle staying alive. Ablative's already popped for him. Only 6 stacks of Necrotic as he line of sights Edelweiss just a bit there. He's trying to dance in and out of the doorway because what happens is the suppression fire that comes from the Marines, if it fails to cast because you're line of sight at the very last second, it will just recast it, so he's trying to avoid that. But at that point, he was line of sighting his healer so much that it almost caused him to die, so that you should just eat the suppression fire and have the healer dispel it then.
I think there was still like very min-maxing coming out of Trell here as he just was dancing in and out of the line of sight, as you mentioned. So thankfully he did manage to survive. They still have 2 battle rests, so they could get the tank back up, but things fall apart so fast in this cannon area. As soon as your tank or your aggro target goes down, everything is spread out, and it looks like they're really just waiting for some sort of cooldowns to come back up, because those are not enough mobs for Undead to use the cannon shots on. So not completely sure what their plan is. Maybe they just want to deal with those mobs first without the cannon shots and then try this pull again that they tried earlier. Either way, there's something missing that they don't have anymore that they used the first time around when they wiped. So they don't want to try it again before those mobs are down. Now Pain for FeM also managed to down Jess Howlis now at this point, and they're also trying to do the cannon area now. And at this point, I mean, Pain for FeM not behind anymore. They're ahead in trash. It's still a depth difference, right? You still have those 4 deaths, but if No Girls Allowed doesn't start with their cannon pull soon, then they might fall even further behind.
So I think what happened is Dilemma's actually having some internet issues right now, which is why he's hanging out on the side. I thought he was waiting for his cold snap. It was the only cooldown that they didn't have available, but he's just back now. He's having some issues. Trell ends up going down. Undead goes down. Dilemma, I think, is back in now. He's having his own issues, so just a lot of disaster here for No Girls Allowed. Some misplay and some just unlucky. Pain for FeM jumping on this opportunity as they start setting up their balcony attempt as well. They've killed the Void Emissary on their side. They're cleaving down all of the trash, at least the beginning trash that we see No Girls Allowed doing here, and then they're going to get ready to go on the big pull as well.
Yeah, so unfortunately, No Girls Allowed did not manage to do this pull with their member missing, with their mage missing. And it's just, you can actually see how difficult this trash is without doing it with cannons. Of course, they had 1 less member because Dilemma is having issues, right? But you still saw Undead and started doing so much damage to those officers and this trash, and it just has so much HP, and it's so hard to deal with if you don't use the cannons. That's why whenever you don't use the cannons, you just want to completely skip this cannon part, because those mobs are just so difficult to deal with. So if you do anything wrong with the cannons and you waste any of your cannon shots and you just have to finish off the trash with your own damage, then it causes so many problems. Now, Pain for FeM is also doing a cannon pull here. FeM dropping very low, has a lot of necrotic stacks already, and now they start using their CC to use the cannons.
Yeah, and I mean, they don't have nearly as much control as the side of No Girls Allowed. They don't have the Frost Mage, really, was what it comes down to. They also don't have an AoE stun, an extra AoE stun from the Havoc Demon Hunter. They, of course, have the Shockwave from FeM, but they have a Typhoon, they have an Ursul's, and they have the Ring of Peace coming in from Ricky with some spot attempts there, but they do it quite perfectly. They funnel everything into the room almost perfectly. A couple of mobs leak through, but they're at 76% trash. They still have their 11 deaths on the board from the double wipe on the first boss, plus FeM releasing wants to try and salvage one of the pulls, and that's pretty much most of the difficult part done for them. They still need to get to around 89 or 88% trash before killing Knight Captain Valyria, or for after killing Knight Captain Valyria. That's the amount of trash you can have done before killing the last 5 mobs. So that should be it that they need here, most of the trash, and I think they're going to skip Knight Captain Valyria's trash.
Yeah, so Miwu unfortunately being silenced by this chain and FeM dropping very low. The Ironbark comes out of Miwu here just to make sure that FeM Club does stay alive. And they dealt pretty well with the first cannon, but now the mobs are pretty spread out once they are at the second cannon here. So they want to make sure that they somehow gather them. Ricky actually going down too. They have 1 battle rest available, but Miwu getting silenced again by this chain, so he can't cast a battle rest. He's trying to see some of those mobs just to be able to get them gathered up again. The Vortex coming out too, but the FeM going down, this might be a huge problem for them.
And right on cue, Pain for FeM throws the ball right back in No Girls Allowed court, who's trying to salvage the rest of their pull. Now, they've kind of had to split up their mass pull into several parts because of the issues that they were having. So they're at 49% trash, which is well over what you would do with the full pull. They've killed some of the trash outside while waiting, etc. Now we can see Trell's gone back into the jail area, done most of the mass pull. He's transcended back into the doorway and is waiting for them to catch up. As Sistara, I have no idea where he is, but he's somehow got killed by something and needed to release immediately. So that's an extra death on the board, plus a DPS and control missing for the mass pull coming in. We have Ring of Peace available from Trell whenever he's ready to drop it down, though.
You know, I think what happened was that Sistara, I think they're dividing the pool, that Trell is taking one half of the room and Sistara is actually taking the other half with Netherwalk, as you also, not only are you immune to damage in Netherwalk, but you also have increased movement speed. So once you gather all the mobs and you use your Netherwalk properly, maybe that was their plan, to have him pull the other half. But Sistara is somehow going down before the Netherwalk or after the Netherwalk was used. Either way, it is on cooldown and Sistara went down twice. So now the mobs are nowhere to be seen because they were aggroing him, and this is going to cause a huge problem for them again. But at least we have Dilemma back.
And speaking of going down, Pain for FeM having a full team wipe again. So they're at 20 deaths right now. I mean, No Girls Allowed is trying to help them out by having their own issues, but Pain for FeM is just not taking the bait right now as they fully wipe. They go down to Jess House's area and need to run all the way back up because, of course, everybody released. I don't even know if they have Shadow Melts available. They don't. FeM doesn't have it. Mew doesn't have it. Barrow doesn't have it. The only two that have it are actually Shella is the only person that has it. So they're going to need to just manually kill some trash before doing another big skip and getting back to the cannon area, which is such a shame because they killed most of the tough part of the balcony. They're already at 77% trash. So now they're going to probably get overcount, or at least not have to deal with any more cannon play by killing the trash downstairs here, while No Girls Allowed is again trying the same pull from the hallway. Sistara is back up now, and he has once again used his Netherwalk.
Okay, so this is a huge problem. So Sistara is trying to pull this trash just in front of the next boss, right? In front of the next boss, there's a bunch of trash mobs, and he's trying to pull them over while Trell is doing the pull inside. But he doesn't have a Netherwalk ready anymore, and he keeps getting silenced by the mobs. And then he gets slowed as well because he's silenced, and then he just dies to melee attacks or to any other attacks from those mobs. So the pull that they're trying to do is just not working out for them anymore. Now, Sistara, they're just going to do this side of the mobs here and just leave the other side for now, finishing it off with the cannon, and then they somehow need to deal with the rest of the mobs either without cannon shots, or I'm not completely sure what they're going to do with it, but the strategy they were trying to do is not working out anymore.
This isn't the first time we've seen a handcuff cause a failure on a mass multi-part pull like this. Abracadabra had a lot of issue with this, with the Divine running around and getting handcuffed as well. The handcuffs, it's a 6-second channel, and if it successfully hits you, 6-second channel, you're slowed and you're completely pacified. So Demon Hunter trying to Netherwalk and Fell Rush away, you ain't Fell Rushing anywhere. So he gets caught, he gets killed. I mean, it's such a risky strategy, and it hasn't paid off, what, twice now? Sistara's died, I think, 3 or 4 times doing it twice over. So 13 deaths now for No Girls Allowed. They have managed to get some kind of pull going here as Pain for FeM is dealing back with the second cannon on the balcony before Knight Captain Valyria. They finally killed that off. They're, of course, overcount for trash. They're at 93%, unless they plan on skipping the trash outside of Corgus at the end of the dungeon, which they might be. It looks like they're actually pulling even more. So they might get their 100% count here, and then just Shadow Meld right after Knight Captain Valyria and start on the last boss.
Yeah, they could have skipped this trash, which is something we've seen from Abra, right? But none of them had Shadow Meld ready except the Rogue, and I think the Shad was ready, but there's two-side mobs in there as well, so they just couldn't get past this one. And as you mentioned, they can still just skip the trash after this boss, after Valyria, so maybe that's what they're choosing to do. But killing this trash without any sort of cannon help is definitely going to take quite a while, and they still have a lot more deaths compared to No Girls Allowed, as they're up to 20 deaths. So still a big time difference in favor of No Girls Allowed, and No Girls Allowed still has a bunch of cannon shots left as well, so maybe there's a chance that No Girls Allowed can still catch up. Both of them have the Bloodlust available, but it's not really worth it to use it in this cannon area because, again, most of the mobs are getting dealt with the cannon shots, and the cannon shots don't get any damage boost from the Bloodlust, of course.
And I mean, even Pain for FeM, they're letting full Riot Shield channels go out from the officers, which decrease damage taken from all surrounding mobs by a substantial amount. Just so much time lost for this kind of sloppy play. And they're sitting at 98% trash. They're not even done trash, so they're going to have to kill, I guess, the first Marine or something in the next pack before heading up to Corgus. Either way, they are, in terms of raw speed, ahead in the dungeon. They've already started Knight Captain Valyria. They're about 20% of No Girls Allowed, but they have an extra 35 seconds that they need to make up. Now, one big difference, and is very important to note, is that No Girls Allowed is only at 82% trash. They need to be at 88 or 89 in order to fully kill the remainder of the balcony before Corgus at the end of the dungeon in order to get their 100%, which means that they need to backtrack at some point, Nagura.
Yeah, so that's going to be a huge problem for them. I assume it has to do with their failed pulls over and over that happened inside the house, where Trell was trying to go in, and then they had a huge wipe going on. So maybe they had to pull less in order to just finish it off, and therefore they are missing some trash. You see, there's actually some mobs coming in here. There's a couple of officers alive, so this might just be the trash that they still need, and they're all really low HP. There's a couple of handcuff casts going out, but a huge, really good AoE stun coming in by Star here just to make sure that it is interrupted. So yeah, they're up to 88% now. So good on them to just immediately go to Valeri while still having those mobs alive and just slowly killing them while bursting down the boss. So this is going to be a very close race still. Pain for FeM, again, missing those 2%, so it's going to be very inefficient for them to get this last percent, because even if they single target down one of the mobs, it's just going to take, it's going to be inefficient. It's going to take them almost the same amount of time as No Girls Allowed needs to cannon down their 12%.
Yeah, not the best movement there from FeM with the boss staying in the middle of the room, completely covered by one of the explosive barrel circles, so none of the melee had access to that. On top of it, they had to emergency move some barrels, so Shella had to completely duck out of the boss and help move barrels along with Mew before getting back. So bit of damage lost there. Allowed No Girls Allowed to catch up just a few percent. Now the difference between the two teams is only about 15. It was 20 at the beginning. Pain for FeM done with Knight Captain Valeri here, understandably, as they pulled the boss first. They only have 2% trash to deal with. There are 5 mobs here plus a Void Emissary. I'm not sure what they're going to kill, or what they want to kill. If they're even going to kill anything, maybe they just back out at the end of the dungeon and use Nathanos to port down to the beginning and pull one more piece of trash. But, I mean, I don't know.
Maybe pull a Warden in at the very end.
Yeah,
right?
they might do that.
We've
something. Seen that before from the teams, but they should pull it early if that's the case, although both Wardens pull. I don't know. We'll have to see. But Bloodlust popped here for Pain for FeM as they get started on Overseer Corgi right now. 90% already on the boss. This boss shouldn't give too much trouble. It is fortified version. It's really only the Tyrannical that gets out of hand. No Girls Allowed. They did have the amount of trash percentage that they needed, but they still have to deal with this balcony here.
Yeah, there's a huge single target burst coming out of Ricky and Shelle. Both of them just having insane amount of burst coming out, with the Bloodlust being popped as well, and all of the cooldowns that they have saved up until this very moment. Unfortunately, they did get a double cast here. So double cast with the explosive burst is not going to cost you a wipe, probably, just because it's fortified and there's no other affixes making this more difficult. But it means that your healer can do less DPS. So that is going to be a problem, because this is going to be a very close race between those two teams. So having a couple of doubles, meaning the healer can do less DPS. Now, unfortunately, Dilemma went down for No Girls Allowed, but they now managed to get their 100% trash on their side.
Yeah, not really sure what Dilemma was doing. He ran into one of the Wardens while it was doing its ground pound, essentially, its ground AoE in the swirling. It just one-shot him. Maybe he was going in there for a Frost Nova or something, but nonetheless, I mean, to finish him off, silly death, an extra 5 seconds on the board, which, frankly, I don't really think they can afford at this point. Yeah, they have 30 seconds extra to kill this boss off, but Pain for FeM is already at 30% on the boss. Now, I think something will be the undoing here. It'll either be that death on Dilemma at the end, or it'll be the 2% that Pain for FeM needs. Let's ignore the 20 deaths for them as well.
No, but it really might be a big deal that they still need this 2%, because no matter what, they have to single target something down or go into the cannon and finish something up, but there's a Void Emissary, and that might cost them. FeM actually going down here to one of the AoEs cast from the boss. Unfortunately, they have a rest to get him back up, so they might be recovering here, but another 5 seconds on top of the board, and No Girls Allowed. Seems like they have a lot of single target damage as well. They had their Bloodlust available, had all their cooldowns, so they're going to be catching up in boss DPS as well.
Yeah, and Ricky going down here for Pain for FeM as well at the end. That's another battle res gone, but another 5 seconds on the board, plus the few seconds, of course, of DPS that you miss, even needing to get that GCD down. The DPS is dead. So Overseer Corgus here, 5% for Pain for FeM. 45% for No Girls Allowed. No Girls Allowed is done with the rest of the dungeon, though, so as soon as Corgus dies, they're good to go, and they have 40 seconds to do so. FeM, immediately they turn around, they go over to the Warden, and they head downstairs to the cannon. I don't think they even care what mob they kill, as long as they pound 5 shots into anything here. Probably the Priest will be the best target to do so. They get full CC, cannon shot after cannon shot are poured into the Priest, but I think they missed one cannon shot on one Priest and started hitting the other Priest, so not sure what's going on there. As Overseer Corgus, it's 27% for No Girls Allowed.
Yeah, so this is probably going to be No Girls Allowed. They still don't have the 100% on Pain for FeM's side. They have another 2 deaths from the Viltex Emissary. No Girls Allowed already has the time advantage, and it's just going to be them finishing it off. I mean, No Girls Allowed had so many problems and was trying to almost gift the win to Pain for FeM, but they're just having even more problems, and it's going to be No Girls Allowed who are going to win this 2-0.
I mean, this is This was a dungeon. This was a dungeon between the both teams, and I mean, no girls allowed. You know, yeah, they're gonna take it 2-0, but I was just giving them love in the last game that they turned it around since yesterday, Jack, and then this happens, and then FeM dies, and then we all hang our heads in shame. And
it's fascinating that no girls allowed and Pain for FeM are going to be having near mirror matchups against each other at some points. We're going to have we had a very close to Taldazar run, and then Toldagor just goes into Scuff City here, Tettles.
Well, I mean, okay, so I think the Brewmaster Monk is way better than the Prot Warrior in this necrotic environment for Toldagor specifically. You saw how many issues FeM was having at the very beginning with that very large pull, whereas No Girls Allowed and Trell is just kiting this trash constantly, utilizing the Fire Mage and the Brewmaster Monk Mastery, allowing him to dodge many necrotic stacks that he would otherwise be gaining. He also used Ring of Peace on himself to be able to get a reset as well. And then they also do something very interesting with their Mass Entangle on all of this trash during the Jess Hallis encounter, which is a very good strategy from them as well. But then this Tides Emissary comes in and kind of ruins their day, causes a full team wipe because the mobs are not able to be CC'd by that Ring of Frost that was in the doorway that was their plan. Unfortunately, there's like a Tides Emissary like in a corner, but then, so Pain for FeM is in a spot where they're able to actually take the whole entire match, but they have issues of their own. Ricky ends up going down, then FeM ends up going down, just more necrotic issues, getting shot, just like the mobs not being grouped up. So overall, Toldagor is very quick to get nasty because like if the mobs end up getting spread ever, then you're in a really bad spot, especially with how many mobs you're actually pulling into the cannon. It's a really feast or famine pull, and we saw No Girls Allowed try it like 3 times, and they were eventually able to pull it off, but it is one of those pulls that is like super high risk, super high reward kind of thing.
I think in many ways it's also dependent on the cooldowns, the defensives that you might have at your disposal, because once you have one wipe, some people have put some on cooldown, some haven't, so then you're trying to do it again, and then the things that you're more reliant on are just not there. So it's unfortunate to be able to see, but that does mean that Pain for FeM is going to be getting eliminated. No Girls Allowed moves on, and we'll be awaiting the winner between our next series between Method EU and 40K. So as it stands right now, No Girls Allowed already had a better chance at getting that BlizzCon spot than Pain for FeM. Pain for FeM, of course, had to win it all in order to get that BlizzCon spot. So No Girls Allowed at this point, they're waiting to see who's going to win between the next series, and Method EU has looked really strong here, Sloot, but at the same time, they've been running some off-meta comps.
Yeah, they have. I don't know. It's kind of a weird situation for them now. Who do you want to win, right? If Method EU wins, well, Method EU has been a powerhouse, and it's going to be tough because they need to go far in this tournament to win it all, to try and go to BlizzCon and qualify over 40K. If 40K wins, that means it puts more pressure on them to have to go even further in the tournament to counter the fact that 40K gets more points by advancing to the next level. So, you know, I don't want to be in that position, which is why we're not, Jack. But that's a tough call, and Method EU, who knows, right? I mean, yesterday, yeah, they had some fun with comps. They showed that other classes can be played, et cetera, et cetera. But when it came down to it on Toldagor, they're like, okay, that's enough. Laughter time is over. We've had, you know, and being in the lower bracket for the first time, I mean, does it really matter? No. Have they clinched their first seed for BlizzCon? Yes. They're just having some fun, whatever. But, you know, you got guys like Mike, like Gingy on there that they just don't like losing. They don't like their team being in this lower bracket and not being first. So that might be enough to kind of push it through and be like, okay, we got to get out of this situation.
Well, the rumor mill has, and now was tweeting about this a little bit earlier, I think they're going to play some like Restoration Shaman, Blood DK, Fury Warrior shenanigans. So I guess we're going to end up seeing if they actually do end up coming through with that.